Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our next live session. I'll be your producer for our session, but before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Microsoft Reactor channel. With that, I'll turn it over to our speaker for today. Thanks for joining us.
Are we live or?
Yes, we can start.
Okay, so we're live. Hello, Oskari.
Hey, Alexi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good, thanks. It was an amazing night last night when watching Microsoft Ignite. Did you have an opportunity to watch those sessions?
No, I didn't. That was a little bit sad, but was it cool?
Absolutely fantastic announcements all over the place. So luckily, that will still continue for the rest of the week. So you still have time to watch quite a few announcements.
Okay, cool. But yeah, Oskari, so today we are going to talk about exam prep and especially how to prepare for the exam day. Do you know anything about that topic?
I hope so. Let's see. We are about to find out.
Yeah, we are going to find out shortly. But yeah, let's just quickly introduce ourselves before we get started. So I can go first. So my name is Aleksi Partanen. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a data architect. And I work for this company called Norin, and I come from Finland. And I'm quite active in the whole Microsoft Fabric community. I have been very active in Microsoft Fabric subreddit, and during the summer, I also founded my own Fabric community in Discord. You can just find it by searching for Microsoft Fabric in Discord, and that should be basically the only big Discord server that is covering Microsoft Fabric there. Then I have my YouTube channel that I'm most well known of. So that's Aleksi Partanen, Master of Microsoft Fabric. There I have like around plus 100 videos on Microsoft Fabric, and especially I have many videos about like certification related topics. I have, for example, an 11-hour series for DP700 certification. And you can get to my YouTube channel by using that QR code there. Then also I have my website called certiace.com that offers these kind of a custom-made practice questions for Microsoft certification exams like DP700, DP600, and DP900. And we also have custom-made case studies there. And this platform is, for now, at least completely for free to use. It won't be forever, so take advantage of that while you still can. But yeah, that's mostly about me. And what about you, Oskari?
All right. Thanks, Alexi. Good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on where you're located. My name is Oskar Heikkinen. I am the founder and data analytics architect at DataBlink, where I help Microsoft customers and partners to get most out of their data platform investments. Today, that of course means Microsoft Fabric. Since we're talking about preparing for exams today, I also want to mention that personally, I like to validate my skills by passing relevant certification exams. So I've passed both the Fabric Data Engineer as well as the Fabric Analytics Engineer exams. In addition to me and Alexi, we have moderators sharing our expertise with us today. So if you have any questions at any point, Johan, Doher, and Ilgar will be answering all of your questions in the chat throughout this session. They're also experts in this field, so I highly encourage you to take this opportunity and use the chat to get your questions answered.
Yes, cool. Thank you, Oskari. And let's get started. And By the way, this session that you're currently watching, this is part of the Marks Fabric data days. And what are data days? Basically, data days are these 50 days of live learning, certification prep, vouchers, database contests, and all kinds of things that will teach you more about data and AI with the focus on Marks Fabric. If you want to find more information about Marks Fabric data days, you can go to the aka.ms/fabric data days, and there you can get a lot more information about Fabric data days. Basically, there are still some upcoming sessions. Fabric data days have been already running quite a while, and you can watch most of the sessions that have been already happening on demand, for example, in Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. And there are still some upcoming sessions. And there's also the session that was held yesterday that was getting started with Microsoft Fabric or Microsoft data certifications. And I personally watched a little while of that specific session, and it was a really good session, and it really clarifies you what are those different Microsoft data certifications and which exam could be right for you. And now we are hosting this Prepare for Exam Day option 1, so there will be one more of these Prepare for Exam Day coming up in like 1 week, since these sessions are a little bit over 1 week, since this is a really important topic, since you can really like make a lot of mistakes during the exam day, even though you would be prepared. But me and Oskari will cover this topic so well that you won't be making those mistakes when it is time for your exam day. And there are also some links where you can find the schedule for Fabric data days and more of these live learning sessions. But yep, let's move forward. And there are some contests and challenges also around these Fabric data days. And they end in the end of November. And even though you wouldn't be participating to this contest, really you have to check them out because they are such a cool part of the database and you really want to check them out. But yeah, you can go check out those contests in that link there, and you can also find them by going to the address that I already described to you, like the Fabric database. And then about the database, one very popular thing that is happening are these exam vouchers that are being given out. So there are these 100% exam vouchers for DP600 and DP700, meaning basically that you can get certified for free for those Marks Fabric certifications, which is super cool in my opinion. And then there are also 50% discount vouchers for PL300 and DP900 exams. So definitely take advantage of those, and you basically have to fill in this form to be able to get those. And there, when going to that address, aka.ms/fabric database/search, you can find more information what is required to get those vouchers. But yeah, then and also one side note that there is that you can also check your local user groups if they have like a study groups or that kind of setup there that can help you to get certified. But yeah, let's move forward so that we can get to the topic of this episode. So Oskari, would you like to take over so that this is not going to be my monologue only?
Fantastic. Thank you, Alexi. So this session of Fabric Data Days is about how to prepare for the exam. So Alexi, let's get to it.
Yes.
So personally, when I take on new challenges, I like to know what to expect in advance. In the context of an exam, that doesn't just mean the scope of the exam and how it's scored. I want to understand the whole process. That includes things like, what should I bring with me? Should I be there well in advance? Are there some steps I need to take before the exam starts? And so on. We will, of course, talk about the format of the exam and give you some tips on how to manage your time wisely so that you have enough time to answer all of those questions. And most importantly, how to prepare for the exam. The exams are just measuring how well you know the subject. All the work is put in before the exam, and the exam is there to validate the knowledge that you have built.
Yeah, And maybe people could let us know in the chat if you have already taken some Microsoft certification exam. So are you already familiar with these certification exams, or is this completely new thing to you? So let us know that in the chat, please.
Absolutely. Write that to the chat.
Yes. So let's go forward. So Oskari, would you like to continue?
Yeah. Absolutely. So the Microsoft certifications today are role-based. If you're a data engineer, you should probably look into taking the Fabric Data Engineer certification. If you consider yourself more of an analytics engineer, you should probably go for the Fabric Analytics Engineer certification. However, we will not be covering which exam is the right for you today. If you haven't decided which exam you should go for, I can highly recommend the following link on the slide: aka.ms/fdd/data search. That will take you to a YouTube video. The video is a recording from yesterday's session where Johan and Brian spoke about this. And in case you're wondering, yes, that is the same Johan who is moderating also this chat today and available to answer all of your questions there. So use that opportunity.
Yes, really cool. So, like I said, we want to keep this session quite live and interactive. So this is a live session, and me and Oskari try to be quite fast today so that we have time to take your questions from the chat. So in the end, we are going to answer some questions live. So if you have some questions in mind, you can start to post them to the chat, and our moderators might pick up those and then give them to us so that we can answer them live here in this session after we are done with the content. But yeah, let's get started with the topic of today. So let's start with understanding the exam format and scoring for these role-based exams. And what are these role-based exams? These basically mean now the 2-star exams. So you know that Microsoft has these 1-star exams that are these fundamental exams. Then we have these 2-star exams that are these role-based exams, and then we have the 3-star exams that are these expert level exams. But currently in the data field, we don't have any expert level exams, at least not yet. But yeah, we will be mainly talking about the role-based exams today because those are a bit challenging than those fundamental exams. And basically, 3 role-based exams are like the PL300, DP700, and DP600. DP900 is the fundamental data exam, so it's basically Azure Data Fundamentals, but it covers also Fabric stuff. But here is the typical breakdown. What is the exam format like? So in these role-based exams, you are going to have roughly 60 questions. And many of those questions will be like this kind of a very traditional multiple choice. So you just pick an answer out of these 4 or 5 options, and maybe one of them will be correct. But there are some different types of questions as well, like building lists and doing these drag and drops. Maybe you need to fill in a part of missing part of the code, or then those kind of things, or order a list to a specific order. And then there are these case study questions that many people I would say even fear, because they can be very intimidating, that you have to go through this case study and then answer to questions based on that case study. But a little bit later on in this presentation, we are going to talk about these different types of questions, and especially the case study, how to approach it and how to make sure that you are going to spend your time wisely with those and get the most amount of points from those areas of the exam. And then you are going to have 100 minutes in the exam. So basically, when you start the exam, the timer will start to run, and you basically don't have any way to stop the timer. So it will keep running whatever you do there. So spend your time wisely. And we're also going to talk about these time management strategies that you can use during the exam. Since I personally think that time management strategy is a crucial part of the exam, and it is an essential thing to master, and making sure that you pass the exam. And then you can take these exams in your local test center somewhere, or you can take them virtually, like online at home. But I would highly recommend taking these exams at the test center if you have the possibility to do so, because it's just way less hassle. I have taken some exams at home, but nowadays I only take them at the test center. What about you, Oskari? Do you prefer taking them at home or at the test center?
I prefer the test center over doing them virtually. I feel like it's less hassle for me. So for now, I'm doing them at the test center. I really like the atmosphere and the whole setup that they offer there as well.
Yeah, basically, if you would like to take the exam at home, there are very strict guidelines and rules what kind of setup you must have. Basically, you need to only have a table, and then you can basically have your laptop on the table. If you have like a complicated setup like I have at home, because I do YouTube, I have multiple displays here and lights and everything. I would need to clear up my whole setup, and it would probably take 2 hours to get it broken down and then put it back together. So not just worth for me doing them at home anymore, and I don't have any other appropriate place for taking those exams. So the test center is the right choice for me, at least, and I would recommend it for everybody. I have only heard bad stories happening when you take those exams at home, and in the test center it's usually hassle-free. Oskari, would you like to walk us through how these exams are scored?
Absolutely. Alexi, by the way, we have over 500 people live right now. I was just looking at the chat, and seems like most people right now are going for the Fabric Data Engineer certification for the people that are watching this live right now. So excited, cool. Very relevant session for them, and looks like some people thought that the exam time was 120 minutes, but you just went through the fact that it's 100 minutes that you have for the exam.
Oh, cool. So we are already providing value to people by telling that the exam is 100 minutes. Yeah. But yeah, go ahead, Oskari.
Exactly. So Alex, you mentioned that there are about 60 questions, and the maximum score is 1,000 points. So some of the questions are worth more than 1 point. Some are probably worth a lot more than 1 point. And as a result, you shouldn't waste your time trying to do the math in the back of your head on how many answers do I have right at the moment and how many are wrong. We don't know how many points each question is, so it's not worth trying to calculate whether you're gonna pass or fail during the exam. So I would highly encourage you just to focus on reading the questions, comprehending them, and then answering those questions to the best of your knowledge there.
Yes. You want me to move forward, or do you have something more?
Let's go forward.
Yes.
So now we have an idea of the exam and how it's scored. Let's talk about how to maximize your efficiency on the exam day. So the first point I want to make is that there's no penalty for a wrong answer. So even if you don't know the answer, it's better to guess than to leave a question unanswered. Also, if you're not 100% sure on your answer, you can mark that question for a review and then come back to it later unless otherwise stated in the exam. So there may be a section in the exam where you cannot go back and revisit a question because the next question might reveal the answer to the previous one. But this is clearly stated in the instructions, so I highly recommend read the instructions of the exam. So as a result, what I do is I always answer each question, even if I'm not 100% sure of the answer, and then I mark those questions for review so that I can revisit the questions at the end and possibly at that point change an answer I wasn't too sure about. So we talked about doing these exams at the test center. I prefer to doing them there because it's less hassle for me. And when I go there, I tend to show up at least 15 minutes before the scheduled time so that I have time to check in, show them my ID, fill out any forms then that they may have, and so on. So they always check my ID. So make sure to bring your government official ID. You will not be able to and allowed to take the test if you cannot verify your identity. And just like I don't like to rush to important meetings, I don't like to rush to an exam. I'm happy to be there a little bit earlier so that I'm feeling calm, relaxed, and focused to take the test. And of course, there's no speaking allowed during the exam. So let's go to the next slide about the process and how things will go once you are at the test center.
Before we go to that slide, I would like to ask from people that are they going to take the exam at their home, meaning virtually, or are they going to go to the test center? So let us know in the chat whether you prefer taking the exams virtually or at the test center. I think me and Oskari are now highly recommending the test center, but I would like to hear what is the chat's take on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious on finding that out as well. So please post that in the chat.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide, shall we? So what to expect on exam day? Oskari, will you walk us through this?
Absolutely. So here's how the process will go once you're at the test center. First, you will show your ID. And once your identity has been verified, the exam will be unlocked for you. So make sure to double check your name and the exam name, that they are what you expect on the screen. There may be also always a human error that maybe you are shown the wrong chair, that there's someone else's name and someone else's exam right in front of you. At that point is the perfect opportunity to fix that situation and start the exam you actually came and prepared for. So double check those, and then the next step will be agreeing on the NDA. So make sure to read that through so that you understand the terms and conditions of the NDA. You will need to agree on the NDA if you like to take the certification exam. So read it through so that you understand what you're agreeing to. Also, I cannot highlight this enough. Read the instructions. While we're covering how the exam is structured today, things may always change. Microsoft modifies the exams from time to time. I have taken quite many certifications throughout the years, and I still read the instructions every single time I take an exam. The instructions are there for a reason. Read them so you know what to expect from the exam. Then the next step will be the skill survey. The survey centers around how well you know, or how well you think you know, the different areas you're tested in the exam. The 100-minute time limit that Aleksi mentioned doesn't start until the exam starts. So the skill survey, the instructions, the NDA, and everything before that is not included in that 100 minutes. It starts when you actually start the exam by pushing the start exam button there. When you're done answering the questions, you can still review and revisit them. If you mark the question for review, it will be highlighted at that point, making it easy to find those questions that you weren't too sure about. When you're done reviewing the questions, you will submit the exam for scoring. After that, you won't be able to change your answers, but you can give feedback to Microsoft on any of the exam items. This will help Microsoft to improve the exam. So let's say if you have a question that you feel like is not up to date or is ambiguous, here's your opportunity to give that feedback so that the people taking the exam test after you will have an even better experience. And then finally,
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Quick thing about like giving that feedback about some questions, because I have actually heard stories. This is like very rare, but it has happened before, like that somebody has failed the exam, and then maybe like month from that point, they have received message that they actually passed the exam because there was some tiny mistake or something in some question, and that question was not basically valid. And when they recalculate the score, the person passed the exam. But that's very rare, very rare. But that can actually happen, and I have heard like few stories. But that's why if you spot like an error there, you should definitely give some feedback about those. But yeah,
absolutely. Great story. Thanks for sharing, Alexi. So when you receive the results, what you can do, and what I do when I receive those results, and the results include the information whether you passed or failed. They include the exact score, and then they include the performance of each of those sections on the exam. And I use that information to validate whether I still have some gaps in my knowledge, and I can go and read more about those specific areas. So you can use that feedback to improve your skills even further. And hopefully, of course, you will pass the certification. So at that point, it's time for a celebration.
yes, that was basically perfect walkthrough. I don't have nothing to add there. So really good job, Oskari. Very well done. So let's move forward. So basically now we are going to do a few demos and just change the screen. So we are going to talk about like leveraging practice questions and assessments, and also using the exam Sandbox as well. Can you see my browser window now? Oskari, can you
Yes,
confirm?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes, cool. So I'm using this DP700 Mixed Fabric Data Engineer Associate exam here as an example. I think many people who are studying to the exam are already familiar with this page, where you can find, for example, the modules for the exam. So here we have these like a study modules that are these like Microsoft made learning paths that you can use for your exam preparation. So definitely check this out if you haven't already and you're preparing for this exam. These are like the basic resources that you should go through when preparing for the exam. But underneath these like study modules, we have this practice for exam section, and here we can find this practice assessment. And here we can click this Take Practice Assessment button, and this will basically open up this practice exam that Microsoft has prepared for this specific certification exam. And how I would use this resource here is that I wouldn't use this like many times during my preparation, because the question pool here is probably not that big, or I have noticed in some certification exams at least that I tend to get same questions when I do this multiple times over. But when I would be starting to think that now I'm ready to take the exam, I would take this practice assessment and I would use this to benchmark my knowledge. So you can choose the option, and then you can also check your answer here. And this way you can benchmark your knowledge and get the idea that are you ready to actually take the exam, or are there still some areas that you need to work on before taking the actual exam. But yeah, this is a really great resource provided by Microsoft that I think everybody should use when they are preparing for those certification exams. Is there something you want to say, Oskari, about this practice assessment?
This is one of the ways that I prepare for the exam. So I always go through these learn modules, and then I do these practice assessments for every single exam that I take. So I can highly recommend this one. This is one of my main ways to prepare for any Microsoft exam by default. Really good stuff. And what I do here is that if I answer any of these questions wrong, I actually take that question, copy and paste it to my own list, so that at the end of the day, when I've gone through all of the modules, I have a list of questions that I answered wrong, and I revisit that list and I double check if I'm now able to answer these questions correctly. So I copy and paste both the original question as well as the correct answer to another place, so that I can double check whether I'm able right now to answer all of these practice assessment questions correctly. So that's my approach in using these practice exams.
Yeah, and here we can see that. Here we can see that there are also different types of questions. I think the question types are not like on the same level as in the actual exam. For example, I don't think we're going to have any case studies here, but there are like also some different types of questions, not just basic multiple choice. For example, here we have to choose multiple options and then go forward. And here is another one, and I can check my answer. And here we can see that 2 answers were actually correct here, and I would have to choose both of them to get this question correct. But yeah, this is a really great resource, and I think everybody should utilize this when preparing to those certification exams. Yes, so next there is another resource that I would highly recommend you to check out, especially if this is your first Microsoft certification exam. And this is this exam sandbox. Basically, what this exam sandbox is, let's open up that and let's see. This exam sandbox basically represent the exam UI, how you are going to see it in the actual exam. So you can use this to familiarize yourself with the exam UI and different types of questions that you are going to have in the exam. This is like a really great resource for all the people who have never taken Microsoft certification exam, or it has been already a very long time since you took one of those exams and you don't quite remember how did the exam UI look and how did it feel. But this is very representative of the real exam UI, and we have these very similar sections here, and these are basically the overview and instructions that you should definitely read when in the actual exam, but I'm not going to read them here, otherwise we would be here for ages. But let's move forward, and here is like when exam prompts you something, please read them, because here we are, for example, saying that are we ready to start the exam, and then after we click this, the timer will then start run, and there is no way of stopping that timer after we start the exam. And now we are in the sandbox, and now apparently we have like 8 hours there in the actual exam. Like discussed, you don't have 8 hours to take the exam, but let's move forward. And here we start to get these questions. Of course, these are just like random questions and not really questions that you would have in any actual exam. But here we can see how those exams will look in the exam UI, and we can see how the exam UI works. And here is one of the most important parts, is this review later is found here. So when you are unsure of the question, you can use the review later button here to mark it for review. And like Oskari already discussed previously, I have basically the same strategy in the exam. So I will answer to every question, and I would put in my best guess, even though I'm not sure about the answer. And then I just hit this review later button, because when we move forward in the exam, we are going to have this review section at some point, and then we can come back to those tricky questions that need to be rechecked. Is there, Oskari, something that you want to add about this, like exam sandbox? We can go forward this and take this to a case study quite soon, but anything you want to discuss at this point?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm preparing you for preparing a few questions from the chat for you as you go.
Okay,
so
okay.
Please be prepared. So please finish this section, and then let's take some questions from the chat.
Yeah, But here we can see like this kind of a drag and drop question that there are these different types of questions in the exam. But now I'm just trying to go this through very quickly so that you can get the idea. Here can be these like screenshot type of questions as well in some exams. Also in those data exams, you can have screenshots maybe from Fabric, and then you need to describe what's happening there or those kind of things. And there are these kind of drop-down questions, and let's move forward. I'll try to be quick so we can get to the case study. And here we have these screenshots that would need to be checked and then answer based on those screenshots. And next, let's go through. And here we have, for example, this kind of sessions, this kind of a section in the exam that we are not able to come back to these questions in the review screen. We can see that now the review button is gone. So this is like very good to highlight now that when you get these kind of sections, read the instructions, because this clearly states that you will not be able to return to these questions in the review screen. So this is like one opportunity to answer correctly, and then it is gone. But yeah, let's move forward, and then we have another one of these questions. So I'm now enabling my taskbar there. But yeah, now we can see this review screen. So here we have this one question for review, and here we would be able to go back to that question and adjust our answer based on maybe our new knowledge or some other resources. And in some cases, some questions can actually give answers to those previous questions that you had. So that's also one strategy to keep in mind, that maybe something that you had earlier there, then you have a new question about that same topic that kind of gives away the answer to that previous question. That is quite rare, but it can actually happen. Oskari, do you have something to add?
I think this is a great demo of what we just spoke earlier about the structure of the exam. So please keep on going. You're nailing it. Looks really good.
Yeah, I was wondering that should we talk about using the Learn documentation, because this would be the point when I would actually start to use the Learn documentation when I'm in one of these review screens.
Nice.
So maybe we talk about that, because in the Microsoft like role-based and expert level exams, you can actually use the Microsoft Learn documentation in the exam. So basically they are this kind of a semi-open book, and this means that you can access this Learn documentation here and search for answers. But this Learn documentation can be really like this double-edged sword, because basically you can lose a lot of time when you browse through the documentation and try to find answers for your questions. And that's why I would recommend that you don't use the Learn documentation until when you are in these review screens and you need to double check something for some question. Otherwise, the time management would become most likely problematic, because you would start to lose a lot of time when you browse through the documentation. And also, one of my hot tips about this Learn documentation that I always want to give to everybody is that there is this filter section here, and here basically you can filter by Microsoft product, and here we can, for example, find Microsoft Fabric. So for example, if you're taking DP600 or DP700, please hit this filter and filter these results for Microsoft Fabric, because in many cases some topics that you might be searching here could be applicable to like multiple Microsoft products, and then you would be getting some pages that are not that relevant to you. And also one thing that I want to note, that you can of course practice using this Learn documentation beforehand by finding those answers. But one important thing to note, that when you open these pages here, you cannot use like search on that page. So basically you only have to scroll up and down to find the correct section. So you cannot use like this kind of a Ctrl+F type of functionality there to search things on these pages. Is there something you want to talk about, Oskari? How do you use the Learn documentation in the exam?
Yeah, I don't recommend doing this, but you can take the exam on a hard mode. that means that you don't use the documentation at all.
So
I may have done one of the exams like that.
So that's like the hard one, but
That's why I didn't have any to chip in here.
like that's how the exams used to be, because I think this has been there for like maybe 2 years or something, because the first exams that I took, this was not a possibility there. So you just had to know your things, but now you can access the Learn documentation. Of course, in the real world scenarios, you don't have to rely on your memory and like search engines, and nowadays AI is like the developer's best friend when you are building solutions. But this is very good to know that you can access this, and I want to show you where in the exam UI you are able to actually find the Learn documentation. So it will be one of these buttons here. Actually, in this UI we don't have the button for Learn documentation, but it will be there. And now I have to click through all of these questions here, because this exam UI here, or this Sandbox, doesn't have the option to go back to this review screen, but that option is in the actual exam, so don't worry, you don't have to click those through in the actual exam. So there is a button to go back to this review screen. But Oskar, you wanted me to move forward so that we can get to the case study, right? So I will finish this section here, and remember that when you are prompted with a prompt like this, read it through so that you really know what you are doing and what will happen when you click, for example, yes there. And now we are in the case study. Maybe you want to introduce our viewers to case study who might not be familiar with case studies.
Yeah. So my approach on the case study is that I first read the whole case study, the overview, all the technical details about the different sections that Alex is currently showing here. And then the last thing I do, I actually go to the questions about the topic. And then I most likely will need to go back and revisit some of the areas, because I can't ingest all of that information that the case study includes at one go. So I will read it once to get an overview, but then after reading the question, I will go back to relevant sections and reread them so that I can double check a few details before answering the question. So that's my way of approaching the case study section here. How about you, Alexi? How do you do the case study yourself?
Yeah, basically I have the same approach as you, so I'm a little bit boring there. I don't have like anything to add, but last time when I did this same session with Heini and we were talking about this same topic, Heini actually had a different strategy that is most likely viable as well. Heini said that she goes directly to the questions and doesn't even read the case study, because she said that sometimes there could be questions that are so self-contained that you can answer to them without reading the case study. And she said that she just checks the question and then she just tries to find the relevant part that is needed to answering that question. So that was Heini's approach, but I have the same approach that I read through the case study first and not try to answer to those questions. But yeah, there are different strategies, and I don't say that other strategy is better than other. What works for you, basically?
Yeah, I think Heini's strategy will save time in those self-contained situations that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But the 100-minute time limit, at least for me, has been enough to read through the whole thing and then the questions and then go back. So I haven't developed an advanced strategy to optimize my usage on time that way.
Yeah. And then we can answer to the final question of the case study. And this case study is like this kind of a self-contained section, or how would I say it? So we are going to have a specific dedicated review section for the case study once we have completed. So now we will get to the case study review section that is very similar to those standalone question review section, and here we just review the case study in very similar manner. And basically, I would again at this point only use the documentation and use that documentation in the answers that I'm unsure of, and then try to find the answers quickly from the Learn documentation. But you don't really want to spend too much time browsing through the documentation. But yeah, this case study can feel very intimidating for some people, but it's not something you should be scared of. Like you just have to be efficient and think about your time management with the case study and read it through carefully and try to find answers quickly from the case study material. But yeah, let's move forward and finish this section. And here we have this thing called lab. I don't think any data certifications have labs. I have not personally taken PL300, but I would imagine that it doesn't have a lab. But do you know the facts, Oskari?
Yeah, haven't run into any of the data certifications where you would need to do a lab. So no,
yeah.
Also no from me.
Yes, so don't worry about labs in these like data certification exams. So this is not part of those. But in some Microsoft certification exams, you do have labs where you're like taken to some like environment, for example, to Azure, or in data context, it would be probably Microsoft Fabric or something, and then you would have to do things there. But in the data certification exams, there are no labs. But yeah, cool. And while we are here, maybe some people missed the beginning, so I will do a quick advertisement break. So if you're looking to prepare, especially to DP700, remember to check out my YouTube channel. I have there 11 hours of content for DP700, and I have also a brand new course for DP600 that I'm currently doing. And in this DP700 course, I have like a ton of videos plus like 11 hours of material. So remember to check out my YouTube channel if you are preparing for the DP700 especially. But yeah, shall we move forward and go back to the presentation, or is there something you would still like to add and demo here, Oskari?
I have some questions from the chat for you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the first question goes as follows. There are questions on the exam where you can select multiple correct answers. However, if you don't know them all, can you select one for a score, or do you have to select them all? So I think this is related to now the multi-select questions in the exam.
Yeah, so basically if you would have a question like this, that you will pick multiple of these. Actually, probably this is something that I don't know. Does Microsoft even give information about these things? That at least I know that in the exam you don't get any minus points. So like you should definitely answer to every question. So you don't get any penalty if you answer incorrectly. And I would imagine that maybe these kind of questions would give like some partial points if you get some sections correct, but I don't know about that exam scoring that well. Maybe Pam in the chat could know about that thing, and maybe Pam can write to the chat about this if she knows. But do you know, Oskari?
Yeah, my take on this would be that I answer each question to the best of my abilities. If I know that one of those multiple options is at least correct, I will pick that one, and I won't be picking anything else, just trying to guess. Because it may well be that only one of those options is actually the correct answer. Who knows?
Yeah. In some, it might state which two actions you should take. Then you should know that you should pick two. But like Oskari said, read the question, answer, like put in your best guess, or what is the best possible move based on the question. So read the question and answer, put in your best guess if you don't know the answer. Cool. Do we have any more questions at this stage, or shall we move back to the presentation and then take more questions in a little while.
There's a question about how many times can I take free exam if I fail the first attempt?
I don't know if there are like limitations. I know that at least there is some type of cooldowns that you cannot like take the exam like on the following day. At least that has been the case in the past. I haven't actually failed any Microsoft certification exams previously. I have only failed one other technology certification exam one very long time ago. So I'm not really sure, but there is some type of policy around that, how you can take those. But you can definitely retake the exam for sure. That's like 100% a thing. Well, do you know the answer, Oskari? Or
I actually don't know the answer. That's why I was asking you.
yeah, you're only putting hard questions to me that are difficult to answer. But I'll try to answer them to best of my capabilities. But
don't worry,
yeah.
I have a next question for you. Is the Microsoft Learning path enough to pass? What other resources do you guys recommend?
Yeah, the learning path is a really good starting point, and I would definitely encourage you to start from here. There are like a lot of good resources online, and there are like a lot of community made resources as well. For example, like my YouTube channel that I just advertised, but there are similar YouTube channels like Learn Microsoft Fabric with Will, and then there is Nicola Data Mozart. You can find content from him, and also I think Shabnam has some content related to those. But I think Pam can post to the chat those like community resources for some certification exams, because there are dedicated like Microsoft pages where you can find more of these community resources. Is there some community resources, Oskari, that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to highlight your excellent YouTube channel because you haven't had too much free coverage here. So no, but seriously, that is a great community resource. That would be my go-to resource if I was studying for a Microsoft data certification, and I would like to use a community resource. What I do myself when studying, I only use the Microsoft Learn documentation, and the question is good because the Microsoft Learn documentation, meaning those modules and the practice assessment questions are maybe slightly easier than the questions on the exam. That's my personal opinion.
I agree.
But what I do on top of the modules is I may go to learn.microsoft.com and read the actual product documentation regarding the, let's say, if the scope of the exam includes Lakehouse. I will go to the Lakehouse section and read all of that documentation before taking the exam. So yeah, that is my take. I always use the modules, and then I go to the official product documentation and read those a bit as well. But that's more or less everything that I use at the moment.
Yeah. So
and Pam just messaged on the chat that we have exactly once that we can take the exam with the free voucher. So that is confirmed.
Okay, cool. With the free voucher, you can take it only once. Yeah, that I was guessing as well that that's the case with that. But you can retake the exam and like in the future if you fail it. So it's not like one-time thing that you can just try to. But free voucher is only for one attempt. But Oskari, would you like to just quickly walk us through what are these steps to prepare to take your certification exam?
Yes. So they say the first step is the most important one. Whenever I decided to take an exam, the first thing I do is schedule. You can schedule the exam several months in advance. Just decide when you're going to have it, depending on how much time you think you need for studying the material. I did this once in the wrong order. I studied all the content first, and then when I thought I was ready for the exam, I opened the website for scheduling just to learn that the first available time slot is over a month away. So of course, that made me worried that will I forget some of the relevant details already by the time I actually can take the exam. So the first thing, schedule your exam. And another experience that I want to share is once I got sick a few days before the exam, and it turned out that that wasn't actually a problem because you can schedule the exam and take it at a later point in time. And this is, of course, for free, and there's no question asked why would you want to reschedule and so on. So as a result, you can easily just reschedule if you realize that the studying will take more time than you originally expected. So how I usually practice for these exams, we discussed that. We use mainly Microsoft Learn and of course fantastic community resources like Alex's YouTube channel there. And what I do in addition to that is I dedicate some time in my calendar for learning. Personally, I mark that on my calendar. Like actually, it's there to ensure that I'm really studying and not doing something else with that time. And the practice tests and practice assessments, we also discussed that. Definitely, I think we both agreed that those are a good way of validating that you have learned the relevant content for the exam. And one thing we didn't cover was joining a study group. So joining a study group would be also handy, so you can share the journey when preparing for the exam with others. And I think we have some links for finding a study group as well.
Yeah, you can, maybe your local user group could be organizing those study groups, or there could be also study groups online that you can join. And also, chat, I would like to know, have you already scheduled your exam? So say that in the chat if you have already scheduled. So put yes there if you have already scheduled your exam. We would like to hear that because that is the most important part of the exam preparation process, that you have the deadline there ready and you are studying to taking that exam at a certain point. And then you can, of course, reschedule it like Oscar covered. But now we only have like a few minutes left. So let's go through quickly what are the next things that are happening in the Fabric database. So yesterday we had that great session already getting started with Microsoft data certification sessions. It's already available on demand on Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Go check that out if you haven't already. And now we are having this preparation for exam day option 1, and then we are also going to have the option 2 in the December, and then we have also student database contests final going to be in December, and then the careers in data is also going to be in December. So check those sessions out. And also we want to remind you that there is an opportunity to get those 100% discount vouchers for DP700 and DP600 exams. So definitely take advantage of that. And also there are discount vouchers that take 50% off from PL300 and DP900. So if you're planning to take those exams here as well, so take advantage of that as well. And now I think we are at the end of the presentation. Do we still have some questions? We might have like 2 minutes here to answer those. Or are there any, Oscar?
Yes. Let me look into the chat to see if we have still some questions. By the way, are you able to see the chat yourself?
No, I'm not. I have the presenter mode on here, so I can't even see you. So I'm completely blind here. I would have to change the view to be. Maybe I can change so that I would be able to see it as well. Now I can see the chat as well. But we are soon running out of time.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Alex. The latest one from the chat. what are some good free question banks for practicing for the exams?
Yeah, basically, I have the website called certies.com. There you can find free practice questions, and then there are, of course, the official Microsoft practice questions, and then there are also some other providers that provide those practice questions for certification exams. But I haven't had that much experience with those that I could talk about them. But there are some really nice custom question providers. But yeah, I think we could now start to wrap it up. It was really nice to do this session with you, Oscar, and this was your first Microsoft Reactor live session, and I think you did great. You're such a good presenter. So thank you.
Thank you, Alexi. It was really a huge pleasure to be presenting with you. It's always a pleasure to present with another fellow colleague who's very knowledgeable on the topic. So thank you so much.
Yes, and thanks for all the people attending this session. So yes, so let's wrap it up. So thanks everybody, and bye bye.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.